40% in some areas, which is pretty significant when you think about premium and kind of year over year costs and how much that can actually be. We're also noticing obviously a ton of cancellations, non-renewals. Like Heather mentioned, you might be next to a tree and somehow that affected your eligibility. That can be really confusing as a customer if there's not an agent behind that who's able to kind of advise and explain why that's happening. A lot of companies are 1-800 based. We are not. We do have a 1-800 number, which I'll talk a little bit about a little later on as well. But I think that's something that's really important in today's market because there are a lot of changing factors on the daily, even with the insurance industry right now. Additionally, some things that you might have noticed, possibly even seen on the news, are that there are a lot of insurers who are leaving certain states and they're just simply not writing in these states at all. Now, the good news is we are licensed in some of these states that we've actually got listed here. And we do have resources for that. But again, a lot of it boils down to ensuring that you've got the proper resources and advisement on how to navigate those situations. And then, of course, some of the things you guys might be noticing in the real estate world is the transactional effect of this, which is, deals might be even falling through due to insurance. We've had several customers or even realtors where kind of at the last minute, they're about to close. All of a sudden, we get a call because they just realized that they needed some sort of a specialty product or a policy. Now, all of a sudden, their premium is going to be $10,000 and it actually killed the deal. And so those are kind of some of the things you want to, of course, try to prevent up front. If this hasn't been something you've had to experience yet, then that's awesome. But something to think about because it is happening and because of the way that the insurance industry is continuing to change, it's something to kind of have on your radar so that you can plan ahead and make sure that you aren't in that situation. And then, of course, I think it's safe to say home insurance can affect the real estate transaction. Again, even more so now than what it looked like 2-3 years ago. It's also changing the boat in affordability for some people. Of course, interest rates have increased a little bit. The market has increased. So it's been a little bit more difficult for some people to purchase a home as is. Then you add the insurance aspect into this, and with the rising costs, of course, can be another element that adds some, just a little bit of more difficulty. So again, back to like rising premiums and kind of the stricter underwriting that we're seeing. We're going to talk a little bit about why that's happening, but it is happening. Premiums are doubling. We are seeing some very strict underwriting guidelines, and it's inevitable, and it's going to continue in that direction as well. So, and then, of course, like we talked about, again, some homes are becoming uninsurable or even just simply limiting the buyer's options because of what they're seeing in the premiums or how the insurance is impacting the actual transaction itself. So again, just a little bit about kind of why this is happening. So as we can, you've all probably seen a lot on the news when it comes to like the floods, the wildfires. Wildfire is a big one that's kind of just been taking over, it feels like the last couple of years. Because of this, as you can imagine, there has been seriously record-breaking claim payouts, and it's kind of honestly forced the insurance industry to raise rates. If you think about insurance, it's kind of like a pool. And, obviously people are paying their premiums in. And then when there are, claims that happen, well, out of that pool comes the premiums that you guys all pay in. That's how we kind of pay claims. So when there's some sort of a natural disaster that causes significant, financial trauma, that can obviously be a big impact on the insurance world. And that's what we've kind of seen. And it's, some of these things have happened almost overnight, which means that we're now pulling from those pools overnight. And that can have, again, just such a big impact. And of course, the inflation of the rebuild cost. So over the last several years, I would even say since COVID, we all remember when there was the shortage of different materials and kind of how challenging it was during those times where it felt like overnight, the cost to rebuild just skyrocketed, it doubled. Well, that of course affects the insurance value and what we're insuring homes for, which again is a premium contributor. And that's how we do price out some of the coverages on a home insurance policy. So that's of course increasing home premiums as well. And then some of the insurance company challenges, again, like we talked about a little bit earlier, we're seeing where some companies are just simply pulling out of states altogether. Some insurance companies completely even shut down altogether. And part of that is because of certain regulations and things that the insurance department has in place where, we do have caps on what we're going to be able to raise rates. And unfortunately, if an insurer can't take that and make up for what the loss was all up front in that period of time, that can obviously lead to things like bankruptcy or closing down or pulling out of states. We've seen where insurance companies aren't necessarily closing down or pulling out of states, but they're discontinuing writing new business and they're just sticking with their existing customers. And who knows how long those certain carriers or companies will do that, of course. But that's something obviously to be aware of as well. And then we live in a world right now where it's a little crazy. Fraud is on the rise. And so that's another thing where there's been a lot of different insurance fraud that's kind of happened, which, there's, either been cyber attacks, just things like that, that, again, that affects the insurance industry and the premiums that are paid out and what that looks like as well. So what that means for real estate transactions, I feel like even when I first started, oftentimes, when I talked to a real estate agent, they'd say, well, we're not really part of that, the insurance piece, that's at the end, or that's for the mortgage lender to decide. Contrary to that, I feel like today, and even back then, but today, now more than ever, it's important that real estate agents do kind of get involved up front in that aspect, because I feel like it makes the transaction a lot smoother. It makes the customer, they have a much better experience, and you're able to connect up front so that it helps with unforeseen problems that could arise later down the road. It obviously helps with the sticker shock because, again, insurance premiums are higher than what they used to be. It helps with any delays that could be caused as a result of an insurance aspect, which, again, we see that all the time. I really can't tell you how many times we get a call from a realtor or somebody referred them our way because last minute the insurance company wasn't able to do something that the client thought they could, or they couldn't find a policy in time, things like that. And then debt to income issues. With the premiums being higher than what we've seen in the past, we've noticed where lenders are putting an estimated amount in there and it's just simply, double what they thought it would be. And then now there might be debt to income issues that can cause some delays, or some heartache as well, and some cost changes, which of course is going to affect your buyer's experience.
Can I ask a question to the group?
Yeah.
If you guys want to drop in the chat, how many of you guys have an actual insurance agent you work with, or do you just let your lenders do it and you just aren't really part of the process? I'm just curious. So drop in the chat and I'll let Paige keep going. We can chat about it. So
it's a good question.
Yeah.
So a couple of things that you can do as realtors to help, and I do talk a little bit fast, so if I need to slow down, let me know. I also love insurance, so I get a little excited and then, I just get really going. So let me know if I need to slow down at any point. But a couple things that you guys can do to help. So again, start the conversation early. Do not wait till closing. I kind of like what Heather was mentioning, and we do this with several realtors that we work with. There's lots of ways that you can do it, but we are one of the first points of contact that they put in there on the list of things that the buyer needs to do once they go under contract. Additionally, we have a flyer, and Brooke and Heather's team is always awesome about, making sure that that stays up to date so that their buyers have our updated information and they put that in their buyers packets. And I don't want to speak for you guys, so feel free to, if you guys have adjusted that process, that I'll jump in. But then they connect us early on. And then to top it off, they also do send us a buyer's list, of course, with the customer's permission. And we're able to make warm contact so we can reach out to them up front, take that headache off.
Hello, are you home?
I am.
Okay, I'm
Oh,
coming.
right.
chatting.
So
All right.
I got it.
Okay. And so we're happy to reach out and kind of make that initial point of contact as well. That way, again, it just takes off one more thing that you guys have on your list of things to do, because, we understand how much goes into a transaction and it is a lot. You guys already have a list of things to do. Oftentimes the last thing you guys want to do is, add in another thing to check off that box. So again, start the conversation early. I think that's one of the first things that buyers should do. And it's been proven to be a successful approach where we're able to kind of like, just hit it up front and identify what a customer needs before, weeks into the close, until they're about to close, and that can cause issues. Again, work with an insurance professional who understands real estate transactions. I know Heather mentioned that she was going to possibly see who already has an agent they work with. If you already have someone, amazing. Even if you do, though, please feel free to always reach out to us. Again, we are licensed in several states and we specialize in various different products, situations, policies. We're always happy to help. Understand what impacts insurability. This is a big one. Some of the common ones that you guys probably see even are like things like roofing, right? Now wildfire is becoming a big one where you probably hear some heartache with customers where they're having troubles getting insurance because they're in a wildfire zone or maybe a flood zone that's impacting their eligibility. And not all carriers are specialized in handling this. And so I think that's a really important piece of kind of understanding that and even identifying that upfront for your borrower. That way, again, it can be something that you maybe bring to their attention early on, because when it does come to some of those things, it takes some time to obviously be able to get them a product that's going to fit that need. So the more time, the better. And then know a little bit about the state-specific insurance trends that are happening. If I always say as a realtor or an insurance professional, know what's going on around you. For example, out here in the Salt Lake Valley, there's certain zip codes or areas where I can point to a mountainside and I can say, okay, I know that area is going to be an automatic wildfire zone. Or again, I'm not going to lie, I could be driving down the road and I could immediately notice that there's a roof deteriorating, and I know that's an insurability issue. So those are things that if you can kind of identify those even as a realtor, you can think them up front, and it will help your customer's transaction go much smoother towards the end, at least from an insurance side. And again, if you're looking at this all and you're like, well, this has never happened to me, that's awesome. That's great. Possibility could be that it's happened to your customer though. Maybe you didn't hear about it and that's lucky, but they might have, if you're selling homes, this has probably happened. So kind of being able to identify that and help your customer through it versus not recognizing it, I think is a really great approach to take. And then again, I keep just kind of emphasizing on this, and I want to say that I put this in here so many times because the way the insurance industry has changed and is continuing to change. I think it's going to be just something that's even more important, and that is encourage your clients to shop around early. A lot of the times, by the way, the lender does not do that up front. A lot of really great lenders do kind of, start that process early with the customer, but because it's not always done until towards the end, it's a great opportunity for you as a realtor to encourage that so that they can start that process up front. The better the experience and the transaction that they're going to have with you guys, obviously, the more referrals they're going to send and the more homes they're going to buy from you. So it's a win-win.
Well, we have a good example of, actually, it was a friend of mine who just purchased, and they were in a really heavily wooded area, and it took them over a month to get the insurance company to approve it. But they had to do an emergency policy, so they had to pay $10,000 at closing to just get it binded until they could figure it out later. So I think to that point, doing it, especially if it's going to be a problematic property. Randy asked a question. He said, is that okay if I ask you right now?
Yeah.
He said, I would like to know from Paige if she's provided any other insurance carrier that is very competitive with Citizen Insurance in Florida, because next year Citizen is requiring all insurance with them to get flood insurance, even though they're not in a flood zone.
Yes. So we actually use Citizens as a last resort because Citizens is more for high risk areas, which is obviously a good thing. They allow us to be able to write different, home policies that otherwise would be difficult to find in the market. But we actually do write through, if you've heard of True, we usually write through them first because one, the premium's more competitive. Additionally, their expectations are a little bit less, they're a little bit more lenient. Citizens has some pretty hefty expectations, and to the point that was just made there, yes, they're requiring a lot more, not just of the customer, but of the insurance agencies as well, when it comes to what is being issued through their that carrier. It's a lot more government regulated than like some of the private companies such as True that we're writing through. So yes, we have some solutions outside of Citizens. We can actually write through Citizens directly though. So if we need to, we can go, we will outsource it there. But to that point, yes, we've got other options that I actually recommend before we even use Citizens because of that reason.
So
Does that
guys, Randy, and you can chime in, but so you guys don't necessarily just go through AmFam, you also broker out to different companies?
Yes. So AmFam's not even in Florida. So we're in Florida. AmFam is not. AmFam is in, what is it? I think 19 states. We're in 26. And so, yes, to answer that question simply, we broker it out to several different carriers that we're appointed with directly. That means we are still the direct agent for you. We're still the point of contact for the customer. We just write it through a different carrier outside of American Family. And we do that for states within too. So like in Utah, we will still write it through other carriers depending on the scenario. The reason that obviously American Family being our primary carrier, not only are the rates absolutely amazing most of the time, the coverages are usually really a lot better, again, depending on the policy type, just with what they've got built in. And then because of the way that American Family is structured specifically, if there ever is a claim, we're able to, it feels like we can pick up the phone and call the president of that department almost and navigate certain claim situations. So that can be some of the benefits when we do use American Family. But for any other state or any other carriers we use, again, because we are still the direct agent, I think that there's options where customers can go. It's 1-800 base. They can possibly purchase like a citizen's policy, for example. But again, I recommend against that mainly. I shouldn't say I recommend against that. If that's the best fit for them, then that's awesome. But if they're looking for a professional that can kind of help guide them and help provide other solutions like the true policy before simply just going to citizens as the only alternative, those are the things that, we kind of do on their behalf.
Paige, what I wanted to chime in about is a lot of our clients, obviously, what you just said, would like to go with private insurance policies. But the gap between, so Citizen now in Florida says if you can get insurance that's just 20% higher than our policy, we're going to push you to a private insurance.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're not seeing that very much. So basically what happens is, especially homes that are closer to water, like the greatest experience I just received is I have a client just moved from Connecticut to Florida, and he actually works for State Farm Insurance. And so he basically sat there and said, okay, I need to make sure that my house is more than 2.5 miles away from the beach, ocean, and the river. And I'm like, okay. But then when we found out the property that he bought, he was actually in a flood zone. But even with that, his insurance was actually less just because, in Florida, we're surged to hurricanes. But the point is that his insurance is so much less, not because he's just a State Farm agency, but he's also away from the ocean side. So, but the bottom line is this. A lot of people want to move away from insurance because they know how, when it comes to a claim, insurance with Citizen is going to be a trouble. So how can we get insurance go? Like I have an agency that I work with. And when we give our customers the quotes, we give them private insurance and Citizen insurance. And majority of them are actually going to go with Citizen just because the cost of what they're paying the annual premium is. So, like I said, I like to work with you to find out if you have private policy companies, private insurance companies that are able to give us a quote that's very similar or close to Citizen pricing and not what we're having competitive. Like, I'll just give you one example. I had a lady who had insurance with a company called Frontline. She was actually paying 3,500, okay, a year. Now, Frontline came back to her and said she's paying 19,000 because she actually made an accident where she lapsed. So it's a whole new policy. Okay. She's not in a flood zone, so that's a good sign, but she's not required to have flood insurance. But then we get another quote from another agency who came in at 12. Now we come to Citizen, it comes in at 45, and it's exactly the same coverage. So in other words, the deductibles are the same.
Right. That makes sense. I would have to look at the policy specimen of that carrier that you were referencing, in comparison to the Citizens policy. But I completely understand what you're saying because obviously premium and price is important. And especially if most of the coverages appear to be identical, then that would be a great question as to, well, then why is the premium so much different? Based on case to case, the carriers we use are typically more cost effective than the Citizens options that we quote. So I don't know if the company you work with uses True, or have you heard of True at all? Or
I don't know if they use it. I don't know.
that one, I love that. I love the carrier. I love that product. That one we found to be just a great solution and option. Again, when we could, I guess, specifically compare it to the Citizens policies. So I would be interested actually even in potentially providing some quotes for that scenario to see if we were able to offer something that's as comparable to Citizens or better, or even more so, just even more competitive than the rate it sounds like they got, because that's a pretty significant jump from going, 4,000 or 5,000 to a $90,000 quote down to the best you got is 12,000.
Exactly. So the lowest we got in private was 12,000. Then you get all the way down to Citizen. So, and especially for like my area, we have a lot of people that basically they look at their monthly payment. So, if you have a $15,000 premium, it's actually for some people might be I would say similar to their mortgage payment or higher than their mortgage payment, you know?
Right.
So that's the thing, you got people paying $800 on mortgage and then their premium is $1,250 per month. It's more than their
Yeah.
mortgage payment, you
Right.
know?
No,
So
absolutely.
that's why we need to find out. And I would appreciate if I'll work with you if we can say, here's some, private insurance agency, because everybody wants to work with a private agency. They want to
Exactly.
be able to feel comfortable. When you talk to someone about Citizen Insurance, they're like, yeah, well, they don't really pay well, Do you
Yeah,
get all that stories out there?
right.
So, but
I'm glad
anyway,
you brought that up, Randy, because you're right. That is a real problem. And it can be hard when you're talking that your insurance payment is more than your actual mortgage or close. And that's a really tempting decision to say, I'm going to go Citizens because the alternative is I'm paying more than what my actual mortgage payment is for insurance. So you're going to almost risk it, right? And so that's what we want to prevent the customer from having to experience. And I think you even said it best too. With what we're seeing and kind of what the options are out there, if there is a claim, it can be challenging with Citizens in the way that it is and how the
it
claims are
is.
processed. And so, yes, I would love to be able to see if maybe we have some additional options that you'd be able to provide for your customers. That way they can feel like they're part of like the private insurance and feel comfortable too and sleep well at night, knowing if there is a claim, they've not only got a product that's with a private insurer, but then they've got a private insurance agent as well that can navigate the claim with them.
Yeah. I'm sure that if you can get, private insurance, that would be pretty close. I mean, let's look at it this way. If an insurance quote from Citizen is 4,500 a year and you got one that's private for 5,000, are we gonna go Citizen for $500? No. It's
Yeah.
pennies on the dollar. So most people, you can get a lot of clients by going to private if we can move them from Citizen.
Yeah.
So but they want them to be close, not a difference of 4,500 to 15,000 or 19,000 on
Yeah,
insurance.
that's
That's a big
extravagant.
jump.
It is.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and then to your point, and also Heather had mentioned earlier, the customer she was mentioning that had to kind of get that rush policy for $10,000. Well, was the deal was able to close, which is great. That was the goal. Obviously, they were able to find an insurance policy. That's also great. It was extremely expensive. Now they've got to do things after closing. They've got to obviously go through, make the changes, update the mortgage company. Then a lot of those products, they do have, they don't prorate the same. So you don't get the full refund that you otherwise would if you were able to be with a certain product. And so that can also prevent challenges as well, because how soon can somebody switch after they were able, after they had to do a rush policy? It's dependent, right? And so that's another aspect too of, again, just kind of doing it up front so that you're not having those last minute challenges. Because even Citizens, again, it depends on the policy and contract. But canceling midterm, there can be more charges than there would normally be on an insurance policy that's prorated where we
Hey, you're in the
refund back.
wrong thread. I tried
Yeah.
to tell you, but then you.
So one of the things that actually, when it comes to challenging on insurance, I'll just give you my experience about doing transaction, is some insurance companies, especially in private, might not go and give you insurance because on their 4-point inspection or wind mitigation report states that the roof has no life left, and in order to close the deal, we got to basically say to the seller, hey, you got to give us credit because the roofing companies are so backed up with their work and we want the roof to be done after closing. But we can't close if we don't get insurance on the home. So we have to find an insurance company that's willing to insure you, close on the home, and then within 60 days get a new roof, get a new, inspection report, send it back to the insurance company and get that rebate or change the insurance policy like you mentioned.
Yes. Yep. And and again, if we can do the private insurance, it's so great because then we have a little bit more leniency and we have a lot more ability to kind of communicate and navigate with the underwriters to explain those scenarios. Our underwriters are really awesome and they usually do work with us fairly well. Of course we have to get some documentation often to kind of show, hey, here's what the credit was in there, or here's the contractor they're already planning on using. It can't happen in 14 days. They're literally going to close. But if we don't help them get this, they're not going to close. So what can we kind of do on this? And oftentimes underwriters will work with us on that. If it's one of our direct carriers and, it's not one of the government managed programs, because those ones are definitely not, they're a lot more strict. We're not able to usually do things like that. But depending on the scenario and of course, how bad the roof might look, if it's specifically the roof, or, even if it's something to do with the exterior, there's lots of different things, the plumbing, the pipes, the electrical, Even those things come up all the time where, you know, people have some type of 1900 electrical that was put in, some type of aluminum that's dangerous, things like that. And our underwriters are usually pretty understanding about that within reason, of course, as long as we can give proper documentation. So those are scenarios we can kind of try to navigate as well, because they can become kind of a headache even in some of these transactions. Because I think, you know, some of the customers we've worked with that are experiencing these things, they're kind of panicked about the insurance side, and they've heard these horror stories, or, you know, they haven't been able to find anything. And by the time sometimes that they even get sent to us, it's after they've had to kind of like go on this up and down train of even being canceled by another carrier in order to finally get to the point they're at. And that can just create kind of a bad taste in their mouth about the insurance process in general. So we try to prevent that best we can, but it happens obviously. So
Yeah.
One more fast question and then I'll let you get going on your slide. But Angela Cohen asked a really good question that just actually happened to me as well. But she said she has a scenario where a borrower is unable to get coverage with their existing insurance company on a new property because either they or the new property have had a previous claim. Can you expand on that?
yes, so great question. Again, this is one of the areas we kind of specialize in. Maybe it's my OCD, but all of my whole team kind of knows this. We always check what's called the PCL, which is of course the property claims loss report, because the insurance should not follow the house. It should follow the person. So if there's a seller and they had a claim, or there's something that happened while they were living there, and for some reason, because sometimes it does pull an error, it's pulling through on the borrower or the buyer who's trying to purchase the home. If it's pulling through on their quote somehow through the system, we can actually fix that. Oftentimes the problem is that agents don't know to look for that. We can get things like letters of experience is what we call them. And those kind of show the actual loss reports for the person versus the home, which then therefore makes the buyer insurable. In the insurance industry, just because a home had a claim does not necessarily mean that it's going to have another one. Oftentimes, and this is actually a statistic even, it's more based on the borrower themselves. And what we find is claims frequency is not necessarily due to the home and what may be going on with the home itself, but the borrower or the person who owns the home. So as far as that scenario goes, if you do run into that and somehow the buyer is saying, well, we're being effective because there was a claim on this home and it was the seller's, and somehow the insurance company they're working with is not able to get that removed, or isn't understanding that that's not actually their claim, that is something that we can do and help get that removed if it's pulling through on their PCL for some reason, since it does sometimes happen when it, you know, a borrower is now attached to a potential address. Just because that's how the system works. Obviously, systems are pretty, you know, advanced these days, but we see it still where somehow that pulls through an error, and ultimately we'll get that fixed as long as it's not the actual borrower or the insured that we're working on. Does that answer that?
That was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you have, so we just had a situation, and I did call you about this, where I have a listing and the home came back positive with mold. And then when we were trying to remediate the mold, the basement flooded. And then it's been a debacle. And I'm like, does my seller file a claim? What do we do? How's that going to affect the property? Can you just touch on that just a little teeny bit? Like if you have something in contract, and we are in contract, you know, he's waiting. I told him wait and file everything once we get this thing through and closed, but do you have any feedback on that?
So the good news is, and hopefully I understood your question right. So one other thing that you can kind of keep in mind is if there is a situation where there's a loss, or maybe it's mold, like you mentioned, in a property, and now you've got borrowers, I'm sure that they're on there and being like, oh my gosh, there's mold, you know, get that out. You actually don't necessarily have to wait until the transaction closes. That is one of the misconceptions even, and I'm going to kind of even bring auto insurance as an example because it's easily explained. We get customers all the time where they're like, well, we don't want to switch because we're in the middle of a claim. And I always let them know the claim is only going to be able to follow the term dates, which means that if you switch even midterm and now you're with a new carrier, let's say you switch to us while you're in the middle of a claim with Farmers, it's not going to impact the claim whatsoever. Legally, the carrier that you were with when you had that claim is, you know, they have to be the ones to actually fulfill that. And so in a case like this where you might have mold and you can wait until after you close, but if they kind of want to get started on it now, especially so that the buyers can see that they're being super proactive with it. And in fact, I would recommend that because then the buyers don't somehow end up on the line for it. I'm sure because you're an amazing realtor, Heather. I know everybody on this call is an amazing realtor. So I'm sure you guys have things in there to protect the buyer so that they're not necessarily on the line for that after the closing. But mold is also a tricky one because the insurance companies, they do not cover it on a lot of policies. We actually do have mold coverage in our American Family policy and in most of our other policies. We'll add it by endorsement. But there are companies that exclude it entirely because the problem with mold is you don't actually know when it started. It could have actually started 10 years ago, which means that it was outside of your term dates. And that company, unless you can prove otherwise, may decline it if they believe that it had started before they took on the liability or assumed the risk is what they call it. So that's why mold can get a little bit tricky. And that's another reason that when it comes to mold, I would say have your seller file the claim, and it wouldn't negatively impact the transaction. If anything, it might help protect the buyer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And then I think I got a little bit lost on where I'm at with my slide. I think I was here. Also, can you guys see this whole thing and the side too?
Yes.
Okay, I'll put it back in presentation mode. I have this massive screen. I wish you could all see it. It's a gaming screen, but it works great for work. So again, if anyone needs the link, I'll send it to you. It's amazing. I'll never go back. But with that said, when I have it on, I can't see you guys. So I had to minimize it, but I'm going to go back to presentation mode. So let's see here. Okay. All right. So now we're somehow back to the beginning. So let's go here. All right. I think this is kind of where we ended. Let's see, we talked about, encouraging clients to shop around early. So the next thing would be kind of recognizing the hidden costs of low deductibles. So what's so funny about this is back when I started, the average home insurance deductible is actually $500, which is wild to think about because we don't even offer that anymore. I actually don't know a carrier that does. It is not something that we even see. If you're grandfathered into a $500 deductible, maybe 5 years ago, I would have said, keep that deductible. But even now today, I would say that's not always the best thing for you. Oftentimes lower deductibles mean you are paying higher premium because what that means is if you do have a claim, obviously your liability is less before the insurance company pays out, which is why you pay more upfront. Because of the way insurance rates are now, and because of the way that the deductibles do work, you're actually paying a lot more than you think for that deductible oftentimes. And having a higher deductible can actually save you quite a bit of money. But in addition to that, one thing that you want to kind of take into consideration, which we're going to talk about on this next slide here, is the claims. One thing you want to think about and your buyers want to think about is what would you actually be willing to file a claim for? For example, if you have even $1,000 deductible, if your plan would be a claim of $1,500 to file a claim, that may not always be the best option, which is why a higher deductible, even more than the $1,000, is oftentimes in a more beneficial option for your customers, even for yourselves. If you haven't personally analyzed your deductibles recently on, your personal dwellings, your rental dwellings, if you have short-term rentals, things like that. And so obviously a big one is kind of educating on the right balance, because we understand that if there is a claim, you have insurance so that you can use it. What you don't want to do though is kind of going back to claims frequency, is be that person that's just filing a claim for everything. In fact, if it's not something that's going to be covered and you know that, don't file the claim if you can help it, because even now the way insurance companies work, even if it's a $0 payout, because of what we know today, frequency does matter. And somebody who has 4 $0 claims is bound to have another one and eventually build up. And so eligibility isn't even just dependent anymore on how large is the claim, but how many claims do you file? That is a big one. And that is why you want to kind of be careful sometimes in what you're actually filing a claim for. And with that said, again, don't get me wrong. I know, I've heard people be like, well, isn't that what insurance for? Well, yes, insurance is so that if there is some sort of a disaster or a loss, you have coverage for that. But something to actually consider is that the insurance is really actually intended for major disasters, not for things like, you had something happen to your front porch and there's this $3,000 loss. I'm not saying not to file it if you do have a $3,000 loss. If you feel that's in your best interest, we're not going to stop you from ever filing a claim if that's what you want to do necessarily. But what we will do is educate you on how that might affect your insurance policy, because after $1,000 deductible, if it's a $3,000 loss, now you're getting $2,000 not only are you now impacting your eligibility, but your rate is going to increase as well, even for that small $2,000. And again, because of the way the insurance industry is changing, the significance in what you're losing as far as savings and premium increases in today's world is much higher than what it used to be, especially if you're now getting affected eligibility wise and you're having to go to some of these carriers that are for high risk and rates are, again, $10,000 sometimes. That's much higher than what it would have cost had you just assumed that $3,000 loss and paid for it out of pocket, which brings me to why I typically recommend in today's market a $5,000 deductible. I'll tell you guys what I have. I personally have $10,000 deductibles on my stuff because I will not file a claim most likely if it's anything less than $10,000. I don't want to impact my homeowner's insurance. I realize that not everybody wants to take the risk that high, but it is interesting to see what you actually save each year. I'm happy to obviously run numbers for anybody on this call, any of your customers, anything like that, to see what would best fit you guys and your needs. But again, I recommend somewhere around a $5,000 deductible. And also having someone, if there is, if there's a claim, call me, call the agent, try to kind of identify what it's going to look like if that claim is filed before you file it. We always try to encourage our customers to call us before as well, because again, if there is something that we just know is not going to be covered, let's say it's like literally a line item that's excluded on their policy, we'll let them know that up front so that they can decide if they still want to file the claim, and try to prevent them from having a claim listed even as a $0 payout. And so I kind of got ahead of myself on this slide, so I went through these bullets already. But again, when to consider it: major disasters. Obviously, if there's like a fire, if something significant happens, some sort of natural disaster that might be covered, those are things that can happen that, of course, you might need coverage for. If again, you have something really, small, maybe, a hole got put in the wall, obviously you don't want to file claims usually for something like that. When to reconsider are the minor damages that we talked about. And again, we've talked about this too, but filing too often can raise your rates and then also lead to the non-renewals, which then you're really in some high premium brackets that we want to prevent you from drifting off to if possible. So that's a little bit about claims decisions there.
And I like the deductible thing because I'm just going through this. I sent her, well, Paige has all my policies, but I had their team just re-examine every deductible because mine were all set at 1,000. And I think I saved thousands just increasing them, because my theory was like, if I'm not going to file it anyways, why am I spending this money every month? So if you have properties, like she said, I would definitely have your stuff looked at by your insurance agent.
Yes, that's one of my favorite things to actually check, because a lot of people just really don't understand. They want to go with this low deductible thing. And it's like, okay, this isn't health insurance. Health insurance works a little different, right? And we've actually had customers who kind of even misunderstand the two of them. It just works different. So Heather said it really in a simple way that as to why we recommend that. So and then some of the common coverage gaps that you kind of want to be aware of is the replacement cost versus market value. Full replacement cost is something that we highly recommend on everything, and we quote that on everything. A lot of the times what we're seeing now is customers are coming to us and they're saying, well, I've got this lower rate. And what we're seeing is in the fine lines, they're not actually getting what's called replacement cost. They're getting almost what's considered actual cash value, where the actual payout, if there's a claim, depreciates for the age of whatever that item is, or whatever, if it's the home, if it's a piece of personal property. That can leave a customer very underinsured, and you want to make sure you're kind of looking for that, because as realtors, you guys are impacting people's lives in such an amazing way. This is an amazing time in people's lives. It's a dream that they've had to buy this home. I believe in protecting that asset that they're purchasing and making sure that they're not left in a position where, they've been dreaming of this home for years. They finally purchase it with their favorite realtor. Now, all of a sudden, some sort of a loss happens and they're put in a financial, a negative financial situation because they simply didn't have the proper replacement costs. So that's a big one. Water damage and flooding. This is something too that there's a lot, water damage and flooding specifically, there's a lot of hidden exclusions in this area, and making sure that you have the proper coverage on that, whether it be for actual flood insurance that might happen from natural disaster, or whether it be from, a sewer backup or hidden water under, with lines, things like that. Those are things that you want to make sure that you're adding by endorsement if that's coverage that you want to have, because they're oftentimes excluded. Almost any natural disaster you can think of is also not automatically included in your policy. So earthquakes, hurricanes, Wildfires, of course. What are some other ones? A lot of the water ones that we kind of talked about earlier, landslide, things like that. Those need to be added by endorsement because they're often excluded in a policy, and they're not usually automatically added either because the premiums can be pretty significant for those coverages. So that's something to also take into consideration. Roof, that's a big one. Again, I would imagine there's many people on this call that have experienced some sort of a challenge when it comes to a real estate transaction, that maybe the customer's having a roof issue, or like they can't find insurance because the plumbing wasn't updated, or things like that. Those are things to also kind of keep on the lookout for, because sometimes when customers are trying to find these policies and simply just get it through closing, there is a time and a place for that, of course. But there are also ways to do it in a very tactful way, where we're still able to get them the coverage they need while still getting it in a timely manner at a good premium and getting them closed, so that they're not left after closing having exclusions and things that they didn't realize were not included as a result of trying to quickly get this thing closed when they realized that there was some sort of an insurance issue. And then personal property limits. This one's another big one. If you have any collectibles, jewelry is obviously a big one, electronic arts, things like that, even guns, those are not usually automatically included for amounts that people often have. If you have a $30,000 wedding ring and it gets stolen, your insurance company is not going to just cover that. You've got to have that scheduled out on your policy. So those are things to obviously consider adding to your coverage as well. If you have customers that Louis Vuitton purses, you can schedule those things out. So just something to keep in mind also. And then liability coverage. So we kind of touched on this just a little bit earlier when it comes to the way that the world kind of is today. The way that I always tell people, you don't have to be a millionaire to be sued like one. So understanding liability and the coverage that you really need for that is an important one. I believe everybody should have an umbrella policy. I think against Heather's will, I forced her to get an umbrella policy on both her business and her personal line stuff, because it is just so important. If your limits are exceeded on your policies, your umbrella can kick in. So if anybody's on this call and you don't have an umbrella policy, I highly recommend it, whether you call me or your existing agent to ask that they get you some quotes for that. It's really a small premium to pay for a lot of coverage. So I recommend adding that.
Well, and with things getting so expensive, cars even on the road, which is so
Oh my
scary,
gosh,
but
yeah.
I probably need to have mine looked at. So
Yeah,
to
they
make sure I
recently-
up high enough.
Yes, they recently actually changed the state law for what the liability limits are on auto insurance policies. So if you guys haven't already seen this, many of you might see that actually come through, letters that you might get in the mail. I know we're talking about home today, but they increased that because the cost and the liability that's out there these days, it's much higher. And of course, attorneys, they're not cheap either. So those bills add up as well. And with the cars and just the way that things cost, some of the cars anymore, we're totaling things out that we would have never done back in the day, because you used to get in a small fender bender and we'd simply fix the car. Well, now, the front of a car has more electronic function than a cell phone does. So the cost increase is it's pretty significant. So liability protection and making sure that you have that proper coverage is vital. All right, now I feel like I gave you guys a lot of information on the insurance side, and I, gave you all the tools to navigate all the things you should understand about insurance. If during that time you were literally thinking to yourself, I did not sign up for insurance, I'm a freaking realtor, that's okay. We've got your back. That's what we're here for. I wanted to kind of start up by talking a little bit about some of these aspects. Oftentimes, maybe a lot of you already know about some of those things we already talked about, but if you didn't, or you don't want to actually know what side of the mountain, has a high wildfire risk, that's okay. That's what we're here for. So it's our goal to make your job easier. And so I wanted to kind of start by emphasizing that, coming from kind of even growing up watching, a mother as a realtor and kind of watching her do her thing, I really do understand and respect what you guys do for a living. It's really hard. You guys work around the clock, weekends, after hours, all the things. The last thing that I want to do is overwhelm you with a bunch of insurance info that you have to add again to that list of things to do when you're already working on a transaction. So our goal to make your job easier. So first and foremost, convenience. What do we need for a quote? If ever you need a quick quote, or you have a customer that is, maybe they've mentioned something about insurance, hopefully you guys were proactive and already sent them our info, so you don't even have to hear about any inconveniences. But if you do hear about something going on and you just need a quick quote, feel free to call us. We will do the research for you. We can find almost anything. We don't need, the right arm and left leg to get a quote for you guys. We will look everything up for you. We pretty much just need the first and last name, date of birth, and a new home address. And then we can get some options and run some quotes so that you can get an idea of what it would be and what we can do for your customer. We also understand how important speed and reliability is. Oftentimes these transactions do have, deadlines, and there are things that are, people that are waiting on certain things. So if you need it rushed, we can technically get it back quicker than 30 minutes, but we typically say give us about 30 minutes and we can get some options to you. We can have home quotes, EOIs, and any updates that are needed as well within 30 to 60 minutes.
What?
Oh, someone say something?
No.
No?
No.
Once a customer does select an insurance provider, if it's us, for example, the lender then will kind of take it from there. We'll make sure we get all the evidence of insurance over. We actually have our team structured differently than most, where I have one person that is specifically here all day long, every day, just to work on EOIs, certs, and new purchases. So we do that to ensure that we're able to offer that speed and reliability so that your transaction keeps moving along at a very quick speed. And then we respect your relationship with your customers. I know how hard it is to earn the opportunity to work with a customer. And so we will truly and sincerely treat every single one of them with the professionalism that they deserve. And we will make sure that they're taken care of and make them feel like family. So that's something we take pride in. And then as important as, some of the things we've talked about, we do understand that price is important. I think that obviously some of the things we've talked about, like having an insurance agent that can kind of advocate for you, is important. Randy mentioned earlier, obviously when we're talking that the premiums double, we get that premium is a factor, and it does, it comes into play here. So with that said, we do have very extremely competitive premiums. We actually are known to have some of the best home premiums around, which is just a big plus. We also are very experienced when it comes to DTI. We understand the process a lot. So we do have the ability to help get a premium where it needs to be for the closing. Again, within reason, of course, we can, there's certain things we can't do, but for the most part, if there's a specific premium that you need or that your lender needs, if you hear the lender's having a problem with DTI, seriously call us. We know how to handle those, and we don't need much to be able to, get where you need to be for the closing. And then back to ineligible risks. So this is another big one. We specialize in high risks as well. We have a department within my agency that specifically does high risk so that we're able to help with any and all situations that kind of come our way. Because we are so familiarized with this and we do have access to high risk carriers and we do have the experience with it, usually we can still turn around high risk pretty quickly. Of course, if there's anything that's super extravagant or something crazy going on, sometimes that can take a little bit longer than like a 30-minute turnaround time. But we do have the ability to write through several different carriers. And because of our specialty being in this area, our team that handles that, I'm actually one of them in that area. We still have the ability to get that over to you guys really quickly as well. And then I just thought I'd talk a little bit about kind of how our agency looks and how the team is. So we have our awesome sales team here. A little bit about the sales experience. So again, our goal is that the sales team makes everything as convenient as possible, as smooth as possible, from the client's end, the lender's end, and the real estate agent's end. We've also structured it in a way to make sure that nothing is missed. Again, back to like even the happiness of your lender that's working on a transaction. If you haven't already heard, a lender complain because they've been waiting on a cert for a week, or they can't get an insurance agent to reply, or, they finally got the 1-800 number to send it over, but it's wrong. That's not going to happen with us. We have somebody here all day, every day, and after hours if needed to be able to get these certs over and get it done right the first time. That saves a lot of time in a transaction. And the more time you save, the more things you guys can go do to market and get more customers. So our goal is to help take that kind of stress away so you guys can go do that. Again, we're fast and reliable with the policies and the quote requests that you guys send. So when you do send a referral, we will jump right on it. We do after hour stuff as well. So if you ever need anything, or you just, you have a customer that has weird work hours even, we can help with that. Maybe they're out of the country and they need us to text them at 9 o'clock at night, whatever that is, we can help. And then we also make sure that everyone's educated as well. The more that we can educate the customer, the better their experience is going to be. And then the less questions that they're going to have for you as well when it comes to the homeowners insurance process. We also build the relationship with them up front, because that way, after the closing, we want them to know that they can call us directly if there's any insurance issues or they have questions. And we can even help navigate what some of those look like so that they know, are we calling the insurance company? Is it, something that, should be covered, shouldn't be covered? Those kinds of questions that sometimes realtors do get after the fact. So we make sure to kind of build that relationship up front to save you guys time on the back end. And then a little bit about our process is, again, we talked about this earlier, but you can just send us a weekly buyer list, and it includes the name and the contact info, and we will just take it from there. We'll call and introduce and say, you know, hey, so-and-so, let us know you're purchasing a home. Congratulations. We're so excited for you. We just wanted to kind of help initiate the process for your homeowner's insurance, and then so forth. And we'll kind of go through that discussion with them up front. And then also, you know, we'll communicate with your buyer every step of the way, kind of make sure that they're on board, they understand where they're at in the process. We'll even get their lender's information from them so that we're not bothering you guys for that. We'll correspond with the lender that you guys are working with, make sure that we get in contact with them up front. It just makes the process so much smoother. You know, they're not trying to track down at the last minute who they're using for insurance, and again, coming up with some of these problems that they didn't foresee early on. It just makes things so smooth. So we'll do all of that. And then we kind of talked about this as well. Again, price is important. So just a little bit about, I don't even know, am I good on time, by the way? I don't know what time it is.
You got a few more minutes.
Oh
This
my
is
gosh,
what to cover though.
this went by so fast. I'm going to try to read fast then. So yeah, we cover lots of different products. We do auto, home, business, commercial. We even cover pets. If you have anything, you know, super specific or specialty, we can probably do it. Motorcycles, ATVs, trailers, all the things. So call us for any of those needs and we can do that. Obviously, the more discounts we can offer, the better the premium is. And I also believe in having, if you can find an agent you trust that you feel can kind of look at your whole insurance portfolio as a whole. I believe insurance is so much more than just a policy that you have to have. It really is protection to ensure that if there's financial loss that you're covered. So finding an agent that can really kind of advocate on your behalf and kind of package your portfolio together is really important. A little bit about our awesome service team. So again, we take pride in the customer service that we provide. We understand how, how much the relationship that your customer means to you guys, as well as how difficult it is to somehow, gain the opportunity to work with someone. So, and sorry if I'm talking way too fast now. I do have several slides. So with that said, we will make sure that once they do sign up, they experience they have an awesome experience with us. And that again goes kind of back to our great service team that's here 24/7 to kind of help them with any needs that they have. And then we do have a 1-800 number, like I said. So if it's ever like a Sunday, if it's Christmas and it's a Sunday, some crazy date, I don't know. And you guys couldn't get hold of us for some reason, then we have the 1-800 number as well. This kind of just talks a little bit about, again, some of the things that we do to keep customers happy. We do personal insurance reviews at each renewal for customers. So that way we can make sure they're getting the best price, the best coverage. Our claims adjusters, depending on the product, is local. So that can always be helpful for the claims process. Massive, amazing company. So we have over 15 billion in assets if, of course, you're using the American Family product. And so you're not going to have to worry about, us like going out of business or anything like that. Some of the things we talked to at the very beginning of this call, we are here to stay through it all. And then we also do a lot of just different fun client events, whether it be like quarterly giveaways for them or referral campaigns. And that kind of just makes it fun and keeps the customers engaged as well. And then our hours are a little bit different. So our actual direct office is from 7 a.m. to 7. So your customers can call and go to our direct office during that time frame at any time. And then again, we do have the 1-800 number for things outside of that, but you guys can always call or text me if you need something. So there's that. And then a big one here too is, again, we understand that the relationship that you have with the customer is important, but our relationship with you is also important. So if there's a specific way that you prefer we communicate or work with you and your customer, we will do it. Just let us know what that is. Let us know how to best fit your needs, and we'll make sure to customize our service so we can fit the way that your operation runs. And then just again, a little bit about why partner with an insurance agent. Set yourself apart. Especially, again, like I said, back in the day, I feel like, we talk to realtors all the time and they'd say, well, we don't really have a preferred insurance agent, or they'd even say, well, that's not something we deal with, or we don't handle that. And so don't be that realtor that overlooks the home insurance process. Don't leave the customers unprepared. Really just kind of set yourself apart and help guide them through the challenges. I think it adds a lot of extra value. And I truly and sincerely feel that it helps with the customer's experience overall when it comes to what they felt when they purchased the home. What you gain, of course, faster and smoother closings, stronger reputation. I feel strongly about this. Again, I love insurance, so this is kind of where some of this comes from. Not to say that you guys won't have all these things if you don't use insurance agents, but I do feel like it sets you apart. And again, happier clients refer more, more smoother transactions. It means more deals closed too. So sorry, now I'm trying to go really fast because there's a couple slides here and I know we're at 12 now.
You're okay.
And then This last one here, I just think take action now. If you're thinking to yourself, well, I didn't have a chance to write her info down, or I'll deal with the insurance thing later, or if I have something come up, maybe I'll get Paige's info. Just stop what you're doing, take out your phone, scan this, and if you follow us on Instagram, I thought it'd be fun that for anybody exclusively on this call, we'll do a $100 Amazon gift card. We'll record it and stuff and put it on social media. So if you're a winner, unless you don't want to be on it, but then we'll go ahead and announce you guys. So feel free to scan this and it will take you directly to the agency page so that you can kind of follow along. We try to make our page a little bit light, so that way it makes insurance a little more fun. I know sometimes people don't perceive insurance to be as fun as I think it is. I could probably read policy declaration pages at night, just, relaxing in my bed. So I know not everybody works that way though. So we do try to make insurance a little bit more fun. So go ahead and follow us. And if you do, and you're on this call, we'll do just an exclusive drawing for those people. So if there's only 5 of you, then you have a bigger chance, but hopefully there's all 20 of you. I think there's 20 of us on here, and we'll do the drawing for the $100 Amazon gift card. And then, oh, I guess I should leave that up in case anybody hasn't scanned it yet. And so, yeah, I guess the last slide was just questions and answers. So I'm glad we breezed through that, because I know we're at 12:03.
Really, Maria Martin has a question. She wants to know if you have certain carriers that you write with in California.
Yes, so we do. It kind of depends on the product and what is going on. Recently, actually, with the wildfires, that's caused a little bit more challenge as far as what carriers are willing to take. We do also work with Chubb. So if you guys have any customers, like we recently did one with a couple of people out in, what part of the LA was that? And we can actually still write there. The wildfire was lifted in that area. So when it comes to California too, a lot of what we do in that direction is actually with some of our more preferred carriers. So it's not as stringent as the Florida regulations that we have. So our options are actually a lot more comprehensive, which makes it nice.
Got a question. How do I scan when I'm watching on my phone? We'll send out the QR code, you guys, in our email recap, so you can scan this QR code if you're watching on your phone. Does that work, Susan? Yes. But you'll all get we'll send out the QR code to everyone. So, and then Paige, how do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so but the QR code is obviously to our Instagram, and I'll also send out a link. And if Heather, if you want to send this out with that, it will be a link to any which way that you guys want to get hold of us. But here is the direct number, so you can call or text this number. And then I don't even know if people are using fax still. We actually do still use fax for certain things, so I always put it on there just in case. And then this is also my direct email as well. So you can utilize any of those. But again, if there's a different way, like you guys can even Instagram message us and we'll respond that way. We'll Google message you back. We do have a direct office line as well. That one, I'll send that one as well. If you have a referral or you guys want to reach out, I usually give you this number so you can call me personally, but I will have Heather get you guys the number to our actual office line too, if you ever want to call into my office. Or I can give it to you guys on the call. What do you prefer?
Just drop it in the chat.
Okay.
And then I will say, fun fact about Paige, she has been attending Buffini events for probably 15 years now. So she started her business like we all did, doing calls, notes, and pop-bys. So I feel like that's one of the huge reasons why Paige is so great with customer service and just taking care of the clients. So we wouldn't use anybody else. I know that here, and they do a really great job.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been big Buffini fan. Definitely. I think I'm getting kind of old now. It's probably more than 15 years ago. We might be at like 20 years ago, was my first Buffini conference. And then, I've even brought my daughter to it, years later, like she didn't go to the conference, but brought my team there. I'm a big Buffini fan. I love everybody that's been part of the Buffini club, if you will. So there's like a couple of familiar names, which has been fun too, that I see on here. And then some of you guys might not even know that I know you, but I've heard about you. So that's been kind of fun to see too. So thank you guys for the opportunity. I appreciate you all letting me jump on here. And sorry, I know I went a little over. I originally was like, how am I going to talk about insurance for a whole hour? And now I was like trying to hurry and click through slides. So
one more quick question. Kristen's asking favorite carriers for Texas.
Favorite carriers for Texas. We recently did probably American Modern for like homeowners insurance. American Modern's really good. We do use Foremost as well, but I usually do that one kind of more so as an after fact, because I think American Modern specimen's a lot better. And then we actually do write directly through Progressive, by the way. So we are a direct appointed carrier for, or agent for Progressive as well. And so if it's an auto insurance policy, that's where we usually will do Texas policies, is through Progressive. And then we do have a bundling discounts still on like our American Modern products. And our American Modern products will take those discounts if you bundle them with our agency. So that's kind of nice too. So we offer that. And I
Fantastic.
just saw someone said Hawaii. You know what? We just announced our team's actually going there next year for a couple of them. So we might have to do that. We might have to get licensed there.
You probably should keep it going. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. It looks like our questions. Wait, what's been your experience with Bamboo Insurance Company?
So we have not written through Bamboo Insurance Company. I think it's a little bit smaller. I've heard of Bamboo Insurance Company. I can't give personal feedback, I suppose, because we haven't done much with that. And so I don't want to steer anybody the wrong way, actually. So I haven't really written with Bamboo.
All right. Well, thank you, Paige. This has been super informative. Even for me, I selfishly had you come on here so I could learn some stuff today. So thanks for taking time out of your day, you guys, for joining. Sorry we went a little bit late, but we will send out a recap with the recording and all of Paige's contact information along with the QR code. So you can join, or you can follow her on Insta and enter the drawing. So thanks again, and y'all have a good rest of your week.
Awesome presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Okay.
And
See y'all
have a
later.
good week and good weekend. Like you were saying, if you guys even really, do we ever get a weekend?
No.
I guess you do when you love what you do, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yep. All right. See you,
Yep.
everybody.
Thank you guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.